Hey guys, my name is Patch, and I am here today with Munk Duane, and we're talking about being sub-famous. Stick around. Munk, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. We got a lot to talk about and a very short amount of time to do it.
Super. Bring it.
I've got to. I want everybody to understand exactly how you got into the music industry and how your story kind of starts, and then we're going to get into some pretty cool stuff.
Super. Okay. Well, I started just like most other kids. I just wanted to be a famous rock star.
Yeah.
But I actually started playing an instrument when I was 8 years old. I started playing upright bass. So my training is classical.
Yeah.
So very quickly I moved away from this whole rock star concept and gained respect for what I was doing.
Yeah.
Became a vocalist by accident because nobody else wanted to do it. Same thing. Ended up not necessarily singing in a lot of bands, which I did, but getting a classical training as a vocalist.
Yeah.
So I actually studied Italian opera, learned how to have power in my voice, which led me to Berklee.
Yeah.
So went to Berklee to just get better, and I had a similar experience that most people do when I get there, which is you're the big fish in the small pond, and you think you're the badass, and you walk into that school where everybody else is a bigger badass.
Yeah.
I actually sat in the Singer Showcase, which is a big show they put on every year where the upperclassmen show their stuff. So I'm in the Berklee Performance Center watching these guys do things that I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to do, and I cried. And I'm like, I have no right to be here. I'm terrible. I got to go home. But I stuck it out. And that's one of the reasons the dropout rate at Berklee is 50%.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn how to eat humble pie and like it.
Yeah.
So
So you've done some really, really incredible things. You've been on TVs and feature films and all kinds of stuff. So tell me, how did it progress from, after school?
So after school, I started a band called Super G, and we did a lot of playing around here in Boston. We actually got offered a record deal. The record deal was terrible, as a lot of record deals actually are. And after 6 months negotiating that deal, we said no. There was no tour
Why'd you
support.
say no?
There was no tour support. In order to make what we were already making in our day jobs, we would have had to sell gold out of the gate, which was not going to happen without tour support, without the label actually being serious.
Yeah.
This was a label that was famous for throwing artists against the wall and we'll see who sticks. And that's just a lousy business strategy. That's the reason I went to Berklee, was to learn how to read a contract.
Yeah.
So we said no after 6 months, broke up the band. And what actually came out of that was, ironically, I got laid off from my day job like a week after that. But I got a big fat severance package. So I decided to roll the dice. I figured, what is the label going to do for me that I can't do for myself if I was able to finance it? Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, it was about PR and radio promotion on a national level. Mm-hmm. So instead of living on that money for 6 months, which is really the responsible thing I should have done as a new dad with a baby in the house, I rolled the dice and invested in myself and said, let me hire a PR company to do a national campaign. So I hired Adam Lewis at Planetary Group here in Boston. And we did a national campaign. And in doing so, he got me a ton of press. He got me charting on the CMJ on a bunch of stations around the country. And all of a sudden, there was this brand awareness of something that technically was a failed label project, but I just rebranded as Munk and went out with the album.
So how did you pick that company? How did you know who to go for?
I think it was probably a who you know scenario. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure Adam was recommended to me by a number of people I respected. Yeah. And Planetary Group, even at that point, had been around for a while. Yeah. So I went with you get what you pay for, right? And I paid for it. But you do get what you pay for, and out of that, the first music publisher had approached me. And her pitch to me was, hey, do you want to be on The Sopranos? At which I laughed at her because it sounded like a, hey, kid, why don't we? And I said, sure, why not? Let's see what you do. So I signed a few songs over to her. She got me on 2 episodes of The Sopranos. She got me on a bunch of episodes of NCIS, a bunch of daytime TV. All of a sudden, I had this resume out of nowhere. and got my first ASCAP check, and my jaw hit the ground, and I realized, oh my God, you could make money doing this. Nobody knows who I am from a hole in a wall, and that's totally okay because I'm going to Aruba.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Vacation time it is.
It was my first vacation. I paid for it with my income as a songwriter, which, there was just no sweeter vacation to take.
Okay, so this was literally somebody just, came in, found some songs that they liked, and then started basically dishing them out to different people in their own network.
Right.
But how do you expand that beyond that one person? Is it something that you just started shopping around, or what did you do?
You make yourself available, and you say yes to everything. You say no to nothing, and you learn, even if you don't know how to do it, to figure out how to get it done. Mm-hmm. So for me, because she was getting all these placements, I asked her if there was a way I could write specifically for something. I said, oh, that's called writing on spec. Yeah, we can do that. I'll talk to this music supervisor at CBS who's been placing you in these shows, and we'll see what they come back with. What I learned is they come to you at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and they say, here's the scene, here's roughly what it's about, here's the musician we wanted that we can't afford, so we're coming to you. This is kind of what we need it to sound like, but don't do a ripoff, and we need it by noon the next day. So now you now you have to learn how to interpret what the music supervisor is giving you with really loose requirements. How to write something out of nowhere, record it, mix it, master it, send it, all in like a 12-hour period. You're not sleeping that night, and you have no idea what you've actually sent because you're delirious by the time you've sent the mix. Right. And keep your fingers crossed. And what I've learned from doing that is that once you send it, you have to you think of it like it never happened. Mm-hmm. It's just, if you get the hit, awesome. If you don't, okay, onward, and you added something new to your catalog. And so I started writing on spec. And the interesting thing is, because I was based on the East Coast in the Northeast, and not another guy in LA, and I had an unusual name, and I had a bit of a resume, they would start saying, hey, get that Munk guy in Boston. I wasn't just one of 1,000, 2,000, a million other guys in LA doing exactly the same thing. So it started to open the door. And it was a combination of getting good at what I did and a little bit of branding.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your brand. What are you trying to do with the brand itself? Because you're doing some unique things. So
thank you. So it depends on the part of my personality that we're dealing with at the time. If I'm the recording artist, the part I'm focusing on with the brand is that what I do is this modernized version of soul or funk, and it's what would Otis Redding sound like in 2017 with modern convention. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a Black Keys thing, which I absolutely love to death, or Alabama Shakes, also love them to death, which kind of lives in that period. I'm trying to take that period and reimagine it as if it were today. Mm-hmm. That's my brand as a recording artist. Mm-hmm. My brand as a...
Before you go on to that,
sure.
So when you're talking to other young, up-and-coming artists, what kind of I don't know, guidance or mentorship do you give them when they're trying to figure out who they are as an artist, or even as a business? How do you...
Sure. You got to go back to the core. And what motivated you to want to pick up that instrument or sing a song in the first place? I think that's the most honest place you'll ever come from as a musician. And everything else afterwards is artifice. Mm-hmm. Everything else afterwards is... I should be this, or it's just preconceived. What made you want to do it in the first place? Mm-hmm. And having released 3 albums independently, and then gotten a bunch of placements with that, mm-hmm. and then gotten a bunch of work writing specifically for TV, and then having to be a chameleon and get good at writing in different genres. When it came time to do my 4th album, it had been so long that I forgot who I was. And I got so good at being somebody else, I completely lost track of what my identity was. So I actually had to stop. And I had to go back and ask myself those questions. What started this whole thing for me? Mm-hmm. And what started this journey for me was meeting James Brown. I got to meet James Brown when I was 16 years old. And I was walking out of a music conference with a notebook in my hand with my dad. And this limo pulls up. This guy gets out with his entourage. And he starts walking toward me. and I have no idea who this is, and I don't know why he's coming at me. But he takes the notebook out of my hand, writes something on it, says something completely unintelligible, and smiles and walks away. And I look at my dad. I'm like, what just happened? My dad smacks me in the back of the head. He's like, you have no idea who you just met. I said, no, I don't. And it was James Brown. And what he had written on it was, God loves you, James Brown. And that's what he had said. And I couldn't understand him because it was James Brown. But I was such a big Prince fan at the time that it never even occurred to me that this was the root of one of my heroes.
Right.
So again, it was like going back to the root. What started the whole thing? Okay, well, if I love Prince so much, then I really should take a listen to this guy I just met walking out of a hotel.
Right.
And got completely immersed in not only James Brown, but that whole period of music. And it took decades later, when I lost track of my identity, to remember that was the moment that everything changed for me. And what did I love, and who have I been ever since that at my core? And to also be fearless and not care about what is trending, what is cool, what is the most in vogue thing to write. Throw it out the window, because the bottom line is things started happening for me the moment that I thought I had nothing and I didn't care, and it was all about just the music. And that's why people approached me. It wasn't because of everything else I layered on top of it. It was because this is who I was at my musical core.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the artist part out. So the next piece, you were talking about depending on which part of your business.
Right.
So you got the artist part, and then what's the next part?
The next part is the composer part.
Yeah.
So that's the guy who isn't a songwriter, which is different. It's composing for film, and whether that's TV or feature films, which is a whole different muscle. It's about working closely with the director. It's about following requirements. It's about dropping your ego. It's about sometimes the music getting out of the way of what's actually happening, which is hard to do because your job is to just layer and layer, and it's sometimes silence is the most effective tool. And trial by fire. My first film, where I was the primary composer, the director was deaf. So he was relying completely 100% on me to figure it all out. And I had never, ever done a whole film before. I'd done 30 seconds in a TV show.
Right.
So again, say yes to everything and learn.
Right.
So it was a massive, massive learning curve. But it's just, I couldn't have asked for a better first experience as a composer, because all my, I had no one to ask. And sometimes that's a good thing, because it's like being on a shoestring budget. It forces you to be more creative.
Yeah.
So I looked at who some of my film composer heroes were. David Holmes, who did all the Ocean's 11 movies. I just love that vibe. It's just, I just thought it was slick. And Hans Zimmer. I said, okay, let me just ape this a little bit and see if I can make it work. And then that got me my second feature film, and it just grows from there. And I actually got to experience the whole, LA red carpet film premiere experience, which is nothing like you imagine when you see it on TV. You watch it on TV, it's surreal. There's people walking down the carpet, there's flashbulbs going off. When you're the guy on the carpet and there is a sea of people and they're all yelling at you your name because they want you to turn so they can get the best shot, and you're getting interviewed and the whole thing, and you're blind for an hour after that because you've never seen that many flashes in your life. It's the same kind of gratification that when you got your first ASCAP check as a songwriter. Oh my God, I can do this, make a living on it, support my family on it. It's okay if I'm not famous. It's okay if you don't know who I am. It's perfectly okay because I have the advantage of anonymity while doing what I love. And how many people can say that in their lives?
Yeah. And in flies being sub-famous.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So, well, first off, let's talk about what is being sub-famous and why are you so proud of it?
So it's the sub-famous journey, I hate that word, started with, I got a call from a guy from Warner Chappell, and he had heard my music on iTunes. It had fit something he wanted to place for CBS Sports. That voice is super familiar on the phone to me, and I realize it's a guy I went to high school with. It's a guy that I was roommates with at Berkeley. He was one of my oldest friends. We'd lost track for a little bit. And because I had changed my name to Munk from my given name, he had no reason to know it was me. And it was just this bizarre happenstance phone call. I'm like, yo, it's me, dude. And we laugh. And then what ends up happening is he got me a gig writing for CBS Sports for NFL, for NCAA. And I did that for 3 seasons. So it's the kind of thing where you've heard my music in replays and pregame and postgame, the 2010 Super Bowl and the halftime show. You've heard it and you have no idea who I am. I'm still getting paid. That's okay. I'm totally good with that. And I actually started to treat it like a game. It was fun to see how high profile the music I write can be, and how totally nondescript I am as a person too. There's no personality associated with that.
And that's really cool too, because although, well, I guess it's almost like a ghost writer, right? A lot of people have put out a lot of different works and their name been associated with it, and sometimes even associated with somebody else. But it brings another interesting paradigm, that how do you get known and hired for more things when nobody knows who you are? So that's got to be interesting. So how do you keep getting jobs if nobody knows who you are?
Well, how do normal people get jobs? They have a resume. And at the end of the day, your work has to speak for itself. And at the end of the day, when you approach a music supervisor or an art director at an agency, which is really what the new A&R is, and your resume has a reel, and they see your work and hear your work and see that you've done all of this without a record label, without a specific publishing deal, on your own, they're motivated to say, oh, maybe we can do something. So I've treated my job as a writer the same way I treat any other job. My work has to speak for itself. It can't be because, oh, it's Munk, hire him. There are lots of people that get work like that that probably don't deserve the work.
Right.
They're getting the work based on all this great brand building they've done, but at the core of what they do might not be as strong.
Right. So let's talk about brand building. So you're fairly unique in the way that you built your brand, because it's, like you said a second ago, it's not your given name. So tell me, how did we come up with the name?
So the name is just when my son was born, he was 3 weeks premature. He was very skinny. He had a little widow's peak and his ear stuck out like this, so he looked like a monkey. So obviously we kept calling him Monkey, which got shortened to Munk, and it became a junior senior kind of thing. My nickname stuck, and I just on a whim, I was on the phone. I was about to call a record label person that I had been in touch with. And I was like, I'm not going to use Mike. I'm going to use Munk. I'm just going to drop this name and see what happens. And as I started to do that, people would never have to ask Mike who.
Right.
The second I said the word Munk, they knew who it was. They knew what the conversation was going to be about. They took the calls a lot quicker. There was just, because I have the most common name in the world. My name is Michael Ciano. It could be anybody. Right. But when it became Munk, and then when it became Munk Duane, the conversation, it just became a conduit to a conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it hasn't always been an easy road for you to change your name. You had some other things that happened. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, at first I let me do this the way that maybe Sting does it, or I'm just going to be Munk. I'm just going to be the artsy guy. I'm going to have one name. There is a DJ in Germany who goes by the name Munk. Same spelling, M-U-N-K. And we happened on each other because iTunes made a mistake and slammed our catalogs together. And so I sent him a note at first saying, had this name since X, which I realized that you only put out albums since Y. So I have prior usage on this. Would you mind, stepping aside on the brand? you know, and I got a negative response to that. So then I sent a cease and desist, and then I got lawyers involved. And then I realized that international law sucks for IP. There's not a whole lot they can do about it unless he's in your country.
Right.
So there was nothing that either of us could do about it. It was really frustrating. So I, at that point, adapted my middle name, which is Duane. I was named after Duane Eddy, the guitar player. So doomed to be a guitar player right from square one. And I just said, yeah, I'll just, this is who I am now. It's an odd enough pairing of names that it's, you know, it'll generate its own SEO, and let me just be that guy.
Yep. No, awesome move on your part. So let's talk about networking. So I know you're doing a ton of things to get out and about, but I don't think anybody can pull it off. So let's talk about how you do that. I know you do a lot of traveling and stuff like that. So kind of explain to me how you continuously build your network.
You just keep in touch with people. The most valuable network I still have to this day are the people I went to Berkeley with, which is ridiculous because we were just a bunch of college jerks while we were there, you know? I mean, everybody was in the same boat. We were kids.
Yep.
But anybody that was serious about it went on and are doing things and are in different parts of the industry. So keeping in touch with that core circle of influence has been significant because it lends itself to their circles. And everyone's happy at that point because they know who you are, they know what your motivations are, you're friends with them, to expose you to their circles. And it's taking that methodology and continuing to expand it outward, and just making new friends. I mean, that's the Nashville strategy, right? When I went down and started writing Nashville, I did that for a little bit. It was shocking to me being a guy from the Northeast who is like, I want to get to the point. Let's start talking about blah blah blah. Let's do business. That when I sat down with these guys, like, no. We're gonna have a pitcher of beer first.
Right.
We're gonna drink this Bud. And I don't care that you don't like Bud. You're a snob. You're gonna drink this Bud, and we're just gonna talk about sports teams. We're gonna talk about whatever. And if the conversation organically moves toward work, then that'll happen.
Yeah.
So you have to learn that this is about building relationships, and this is actually central to building those relationships.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought up I think you said it twice. So one was Nashville and one was out in LA. You know, that's where everybody thinks as an artist they want to go. It's one of those two.
It's where
places,
I wanted to go
right?
after college.
Yeah. But like people just don't get it that when you get in those areas, you're just like everybody else.
You dilute your brand.
Yep. When you can go and, you know, cherry pick those moments and you go down and you spend, you know, 3 or 4 days or a week or, you know, even 2 weeks if you can line up the meetings and the meet and greets and all that kind of stuff. You're more likely to get recognized than if you make your life right there.
And they're also more likely to try and recruit you to become one of the population.
Exactly.
That's the thing. So you go to Nashville and like, oh, you got to move here. You got to move here. You got to move here. It's the first thing they say.
Yeah.
Well, I can't. And let's see if we can do it without me moving here.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with LA. Less so with LA. Nashville is very about you need to be a resident to get in the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works to your advantage. It did in LA. Nashville didn't work to my advantage. You really do need to live there in order to kind of crack the code.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You know, you take it where you can make it work. I would love to live in LA. I hate traffic like I can't begin to tell you. It's bad enough around here. Every time I'm there, it doesn't matter if it's 11:30 at night on a Sunday, you're sitting and, you know, bumper to bumper. I can't do that. Plus, I don't want to uproot the kids at this time. So this is where I am, and you find a way to make it work. And people who are, and it goes back to what you have built for value upon what you do.
Yeah.
If they want to work with me because they like what I do, that doesn't matter where I am, especially in 2017.
Exactly.
That's what Google Hangouts is for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So tell me about how do you decide who you're going to work with and who you're not, whether it be an agency or another company? You've made some pretty smart moves and you've made some mistakes along the way. So how do you decide which companies you're going to work with?
So At the beginning, I took everything I could get because I had to build the resume. And as soon as I learned that I could make money doing this, I'm like, I need to say yes to everything. It doesn't matter how bad it is.
Right.
I need to say yes to everything. I'm still, to be honest with you, I've been doing it now for 15 years. I'm still saying yes to just about everything. I'm not being terribly picky because every experience that I have is going to make me better at what I do. So if I see a script come in and it's just not good, I don't care. Let me see if I can make the music interesting enough that it, that it gets a mention in the Hollywood Reporter.
Right.
Even if it's the only good thing that they mention in the review, I'll take it. Or that it got mentioned at all, that anyone noticed. There's not a lot of things I say no to, so it's not that I'm not picky. It's that even though I've been in this industry for a while, I'm still learning, and I need to get better. And in order for me to get better, I just have to do it and do it and do it and do it. And there's no laurels to rest on yet.
Yeah. So when you do those, I guess, I don't know, lower end jobs. I don't know how to explain that, or describe that. But do you still promote those the same way? Do you still put everything on your resume? Yeah. Do you throw it out on Facebook? Are you putting it everywhere? I mean,
yeah. One of the biggest lessons I learned along the way was that you at a certain point you have to let go. Let people think what they want to think. It's the same thing when you write a song. Don't tell them what it's about.
Right.
Let them interpret it the way they want to interpret it.
Right.
Because it might be a perspective you're not considering. Chances are there is a perspective you're not considering, and it's personal, and that's fine. And even in a body of work like this, if it's a film score for a movie that I wasn't particularly proud of, in terms of, well, the story could have been better, or maybe this could have looked better, so what?
Yeah.
I did my part to this to add whatever and let someone interpret that as they will. Because it's happened where I've done something where I'm like, oh, it wasn't that great. And someone's come back and they've loved it.
Yeah.
So I would have shot myself in the foot if I held it back.
Yeah. So you've literally written hundreds, if not thousands, of songs, right? I mean, are you in the thousands yet?
Probably.
I
don't count anymore. I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah. So
because it's not quantity, it's quality.
Yeah. So I know that you've done a ton of them, and I know just from being around the industry and talking to other people, they've released 12 tracks on a record, and then it was the one that almost didn't even make the cut is the one that comes out being the most well received, and then the rest of their album gets found because of it. Do you feel like you're in the same exact boat where it's
so as an artist, we're in a new world, and I think we're all trying to figure it out. So let's take facts for what they are. The listening trend right now is a very narrow scope. People listen to songs. They are not listening to albums, and that breaks my heart to say, because I love the art of the format, of the long format. But it just is what it is. So I think that the more that you give them up front, the larger barrier to entry you're creating with what this demographic is willing to absorb. So for the new album, I said, let's try something new. I have 10 songs ready to go. I could release it all at once, or I could release it in drips and drabs and try and measure. It's user testing. Right. It really is. It's a matter of how much can they take at one time, and it gives me a longer runway. When you release an album, you got a 6-week to 8-week run, and then that's it. No matter how well it went, that's it. Yeah. You got to go out and tour for it and blah, 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 blah. If I release 5 songs now and 5 songs in 4 months, then I have a longer runway of audience touch.
Yeah.
Here's something new. Here's something new again. And it's a little pieces, so it's easier to absorb. It's like, when I tell the kids when they're, try and take a big bite of steak, I'm like, don't take that big piece. You're going to, take little pieces.
Yeah. So here's another one I just thought about was when you were writing for a TV show or for a scene.
Right.
You had to work on it all night, but then that's it. You got to fire and forget.
Yep.
Does that translate? Because as a musician, I know that you're somewhat of a perfectionist. And how do you draw the line between where you think it's perfect and where it's ready for release, which might be two different things?
It is. I could tweak the stuff until the cows come home. it's not healthy. At a certain point, perfection is the enemy of good enough. Mm-hmm. And if it's not good enough at any point, don't release it. If you feel like this is good, get it out there, because you'll be writing the same song for years.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually kind of did that on this last album. I took a lot more time with each one of these songs than I ever have with anything else, because this was about me and I'm the artist. And then I realized I'm being a knucklehead because now it's been 2 years, and that's ridiculous. It's never taken me this long to do anything. So it's good enough.
Yeah.
Let's test it.
So a buddy of mine, he told me that he had a friend that had this huge iTunes catalog of songs, and it was like tens of thousands of songs. And he said to him one day, I think they were working out or something, he said, do you actually listen to all the songs in here? He's like, I picked every single one of them.
Yeah.
Like there's no albums in there. It's all songs that I picked.
Right.
And he said from that day on, every time he made a song, he would send it to that guy.
Yep.
And if that guy said it was a good song, it went out. Because he said, I never could get to a point where I was like, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't settle for good enough. And so he said, if somebody else that is a music listener who enjoys music for what it is, if they say it's good to go, it's good to go.
It's good to go.
And that guy is not a musician. He's just a music lover.
His opinion is more important. His opinion is more important. And that's something that we tend to forget as writers and artists. We think we're smarter than our audiences, and we're not. We will never be. Their opinion counts more than ours does, which is not to say you shouldn't have a high bar for what good enough is, but this constant search for something that doesn't exist, there is no such thing as perfection. Stop it. You know, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. So last thing I want to talk about is music as a business. You have, come to grips or come to terms with and actually embrace this, sub-famous mentality, which I think is really, really cool. But music as a business.
Yep.
What kind of tips or, I guess, words of wisdom do you have as far as, other musicians, whether they be brand new or been in the industry for a while? What would be your one, really stout tip as to how to be successful with music as your end-all be-all business?
Let go of your ego. Say yes to everything. And be open to learn and be open to new experiences. We have this idea that we think we are masters of our perception. We're not. And if you open your perception to new experiences, you might not become a master of these new experiences, but you're going to keep adding tools to your toolbox and you keep expanding. But you gotta let the ego go. And that's really hard as an artist, because we create and it's part of who we are. And the whole point is this communal, I need to share this to get validation for what I just did. You don't. And that's hard. You don't need external validation. Are you happy with it? At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Does this represent what I needed to do? Great. That makes it easier for that letting go moment, where it's like, good enough. Yeah. This is it. But in terms of creating a business, you have to be a little more cold and a little more analytical. Leave your passion for the product. This is what I've created with who I am and my whole experience and blah, blah, blah. Awesome. When it comes to marketing that, you have to treat it like any other business and be very CEO about it. And I've worked with a lot of CEOs who are incredibly great guys, but when it comes down to business, it is down to business. And we have to be the same way. And I know that splitting the right and left brain for artists is hard, but you have to strengthen that muscle. You have to get good at it. This is what will open the door to allow you to continue to be that creative, sensitive artist guy. And someone's going to pay you a lot of money to do it. Yeah. And letting the ego go is central to that. It's incredibly difficult. It took me maybe 20 years to do that. because this is not where I started.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier to be here now. But boy, if you had told me this 20 years ago, that's the problem. You tell somebody who's in that stage of, I'm going to be famous and I'm going to do this and I'm going to tour and rule the world, and they're not ready to hear that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe they can, and maybe they can be that 1%. And you got to sort of have that naive, bravado to become that 1%. So I wouldn't want to take it from them. I think that if they hit that, then they were right, and that's awesome, and nobody should tell them otherwise. If they've come around the bend and just missed that, and now they're at that low point that we all hit, like, crap, I just told a record label no. Now what do I do? That's when you're in a good place to start building your business and longevity as an artist and as a musician. And you got to remember that as a composer, your royalties will continue to come to your estate 75 years after your death. Mm-hmm. So what you're building here is the future for your family. Mm-hmm. And for me, keeping that as my focus is what lights the fire under my ass every single day. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. At the end of the day, what are my kids going to live on when I'm gone? What can I leave them? Mm-hmm. Because there's no 401k in the music business.
Yeah.
There's no, you can do investments, but at the end of the day, there's no parachute. You have to create one. As a songwriter, you have one. You just have to learn how to monetize that.
Yep. Munk, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but we come to the point in the show where I'm going to give you a series of rapid fire questions. Okay. And I want you to answer them as quickly as you can. And you ready?
Go for it.
All right. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Dad, husband, musician.
When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do?
I pick up my guitar.
What's your biggest regret this far in business?
Fear.
What is success to you?
Lack of fear.
What makes you smile?
My kids.
What are you most afraid of?
Anything that takes that smile away.
If you lost everything tomorrow, who would be the first person you turn to?
My wife.
What would you do differently if you knew no one was judging you?
Nothing.
What or who have you given up on?
Negativity. Negative people.
All right. And lastly, how many cans of Monster consumed do you think it would take to give you the energy to make $1 million?
How many cans? As many as it took. I'll keep drinking that stuff. $1 million? Sign me up.
Thanks so much, Munk. I appreciate you hanging out. I'm Patch with Mobius Media Solutions, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey, thanks so much for checking out this episode of our podcast. If you guys like the content that you just saw, would you do us a favor and go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below? It really helps us know that we're making the right kind of content that you guys want to watch and listen to. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you check out the description box below, we have all of our social media links. Make sure to follow us on Facebook. We post a lot of our behind the scenes stuff and advertisements for podcasts that are coming up. So once again, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next one.